Well, hello there. How you doing? By the way, this fabric I've got is got a super fine metal mesh in it. This is the stuff they embed in wallets for RF blocking. You could actually sleep underneath this, and you'd have the softest, sweetest sleep ever because you wouldn't have any RF, or 99% of it, actually bombarding you. So that's what this stuff is. This metal mesh fabric that you embed into wallets, and also too, it's basically a simple Faraday cage. For maximum effect, not that you do that with a wallet, you'd actually have it grounded if you're going to sleep underneath it, because Faraday cage needs to be grounded if you're going to be sleeping under it, or if it's going to be lining your walls. It's effective, but it's not truly effective until it's grounded, because electrostatics actually build up. That's the reason why ground exists. By the way, ground is a fancy way of saying counter space, or discharge into counter space. That is what a ground is. It's just another word for the same thing. Isn't it amazing if you have a certain amount of wisdom and insight into how the world works, you can actually simplify everything and see the interconnectivity of everything. This entire earth, by the way, goes in cycles. You're not going to break a cycle. I'm not going to break a cycle. The gurus and masters of the ancient world never could break the cycle. So you and I don't have any chance of doing that. That doesn't mean you should try. And I love helping people. I really do. I love being always really brutally honest. Facts, logic, and wisdom of everything else. But I've only got a few things on this iPad as a reference point. I want to talk about as an addendum to my prior video, because this is the important stuff, the intangibles. Some of it's tangible and palpable. You put your hands on it, and it's demonstrable, and anybody with two eyes can see it. But there's a lot of stuff you can't see. It's an old passage from the works of Shakespeare that goes, "Oh, there is, I do see." How's that work again? I got that wrong. "I see not," but there we go. I'm sorry, I forgot the passage. I'm sorry, I don't remember Shakespeare off the top of my head. "I see not, but all there is I do see." In other words, it's a reference to things that I can see everything, but I can't see what you're talking about. Kind of like love, faith, hope, wisdom, all the things that are demonstrable in this world that we know are real. And of course, the entire world's built upon it, but you can't lay your hands on it. I've had a lot of you, and since I read every comment, you said a lot of your friends are completely clueless. I even had a wonderful lady, a friend of mine, kind of talking about the same thing today when I talked to her. She's a wonderful person. But I've had thousands of you tell me that, especially Aussies talk about fellow Aussies, and Brits talk about fellow Brits, and Canadians too. For some reason, the Aussies, the Brits, and the Canadians, I don't know if this is true. This is these people telling me this themselves, or just they have no idea what's going on. It's kind of all around them and they can't see it. People are kind of living in a nutshell. We've got a serious issue. I mean, there's always been a disparity between the haves and the have-nots, including in medieval days and prior to the medieval days. But even then, if someone was super rich, they still had to mingle with, 99 times out of 100, mingle with the average layperson, so they could see what was going on. Today we have a special situation where if you're like really wealthy, you can live in a nutshell and sniff your own flatulence, and you're completely oblivious. You can be like that funny thing that we've had as a saying now for a long time: let them eat cake. I talk about there's no bread for them to eat, and of course a lot of people tell me that this is not a true quote, and that's not the point. The point is this idea of cluelessness, like, well, if they have no bread, then just let them eat cake. It's about being so clueless you really have no idea how the world works. Like, well, they don't have bread, but maybe they have cake. Even back then, the French nobility and the British nobility had and did experience their lives completely isolated from the rest of the world. But in medieval days, going far back, most people, even if they're super rich, were not isolated. They could see what's going on. Today, people are living in a parallel universe, and they really are living in a nutshell, sniffing their own flatulence, and they think they're their beliefs. And I have to talk about an inverted world, because right now the world is inverted. And there's a lot of stuff going on. This really is an addendum to this. I'm not interested in talking about what Canada's doing and what Australia's doing, or what sort of encroaching tyranny and great evil, dark evil is creeping over the world. I mean, anybody with a half a brain can certainly see it, but a lot of you, and I mean a lot of you, have told me that your friends are clueless, and I know the reason why. People don't see it. They're just too busy, and they're going by their daily lives, and they're working 3 jobs instead of 2, or 2 jobs instead of 1, and everybody's trying to make ends meet. And I have, the same issue. Not that I'm too busy, because I've always, my entire life, had my head on a swivel, and will talk to and ask questions to simple strangers. I ask people all over town about, how worse shoplifting is getting, and this is a very well-to-do town. This is a college town, and it's always been well-to-do, including in bad economic situations here in Lexington. And I know a lot of people are trying to get away from it, and I have a certain amount of people have contacted me about my 10-acre farm that I'm trying to lease out. I mean, it's still there, but other people are wanting to get away from it all. And it's just east of Glasgow, Kentucky, but the whole world is, say the whole world, but most of it, the point I'm actually trying to get to make things really simple here is that it's happening, of course, in certain parts of the world faster than others. It's happening rather quick in the United States, much faster in crown countries, but even if we ignore the fact that, old Harry Q-Tip wrote the book itself named The Great Reset, and the cabal and slash Hydra is absolutely outright saying that tyranny needs to be imposed upon the little peons. That's what they consider you and me, as the little peons. JP Morgan CEO, his name's Jamie Dimon, he suggested that the government seize private property to quicken climate initiatives. I'll let you figure out what you think about that one. Let me know. And of course, Darkstone, as I like to call them, instead of what their true name is. You know what I'm referring to, Darkstone, is buying up any and every property that they can, and they're larger than any government as far as the holdings that they have. But no matter how much money any of these entities have, ultimately it has to come down to willpower. There's the reason why the Soviet Union had not conquered Afghanistan, even though the military machine behind Russia was so much more powerful. And I know that we actually helped them, and they even made a movie about it called Charlie Wilson's WAR. I'm going to spell out the word there. And I know we helped them, but all the tools in the world won't make up for, a strong will in a community. When you have a strong will in a community, you can't break it. You can end it, but you can't break it. And a lot of people are being fractured, and they're designing us to be fractured against each other. And I can feel that, and so can you if you have your eyes open even slightly. But you really have to be deaf, dumb, and blind not to see what's going on. And, you're not going to change your friend's mind. If they want to remain clueless, let them remain clueless. When Deutschland was, rolling down the streets of old Paris, France, anybody that had a brain had already escaped and fled to, whatever region they wanted to. And there's people still baking and rolling bread, and when the tanks were rolling down the streets, there are people that always have been and always will remain that clueless. If they want to stay clueless and keep their head in the sand, there's nothing that you or I are going to do to it. You can show them, you can lead a horse to water, but of course you can't make it drink. Homelessness is off the hook. I don't know what you're planning to do to counteract that, or if you're living on the edge. I'm actually, I hesitate to use the word spooked by an enormous amount of you that have told me that you're hovering on the edge of homelessness. There's a 65-year-old lady that says she's about to be homeless, and no wife, no husband, no kids, nobody to take care of her, and I concern myself with people like that. Whatever happens to me, I have land, and I'm not going to be homeless. It's the last thing they're going to take, unless they make property taxes 10 times high overnight. They're still not going to, my life may end at that point. if they decide to take it, but I'm never going to be homeless. It's not going to happen. I've seen this coming since I was young. I didn't think it would be coming this quick, but when I saw hints of it, I knew it was coming, and I told people, and a lot of people said, oh, that's just crazy. It's just 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Remember that phrase? Come on, man. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. You remember that? Remember that? It's like, no, this is not a 2-week flatten the curve thing. This is the initiative to reset the world. Well, didn't it remind you old Harry Q-Tip wrote the book called The Great Reset? The world is inverted, and I'm going to say it again 2 more times because it has to be said, and it's so important. The world right now is inverted. The world is inverted. We're eating poison. We're consuming poison. I know I'm not healthy. I don't eat or drink or smoke or take substances, but, I'm buried behind the computer too much. I am losing some weight. Certainly not enough. It's dropping the bucket. Nobody's going to get out of this life alive, but the whole world is absolutely inverted. People have literally gone insane. What is undeniably true is now considered false and profane. What was formerly considered evil, false, and profane is now lauded. Anything that is meant to be, against pride is now considered bad. So everything bad is now good, and everything good is now bad. The world, I dare you to even point out any corner of this world that is not inverted. Now, there are still isolated islands, now from the position of the Cabal and Hydra, as I like to call them. These places don't really matter. Places where, common sense is, still in effect. But these places are economically, strategically, and militarily irrelevant from the premise of the eyes of the Cabal and the MIC, which is the military-industrial complex. That everybody right now, and so I have been doing it for much of my life, working ourselves to the bone, leading an unexamined life. I've led an examined life. Most people have not. But I don't know a proper way to phrase this, because this is an informal video, and I meant it to be informal, and I really have very few notes here, but I want to discuss this because you need to see what's going on, because otherwise you're going to get, your neck caught in a bear trap, the bear trap set by the Cabal and Hydra, and you're going to be left high and dry, not realizing, that it's upon you. You're going to think it's off in the distance, and it is off in the distance, but it's a multi-pronged approach to bringing every one of us to our knees. Everything that's going on in this world for the past many years, and we're all living on a human farm. These people literally think that we're the sheep. They think they're the farm owners, and they have their little minions, the wolves out there. There's no sheepdogs anymore protecting the herd, protecting the sheep, sticking up for the sheep. But even the sheepdog, of course, is controlled by. There's just endless levels of control, and you need to be able to see through them. There's no escaping this world alive, but the point is to have as much freedom as possible and be against tyranny and unbrainwashed, lead an unfettered life where we're not consuming poison, consuming propaganda, eating styrofoam food, overpriced now styrofoam food, and perpetually stressed out about bills and taxes and nonsense. And I was reading about a German family where it's illegal to homeschool your children in Germany. And they were fined something like $100,000, and then they moved out of Germany so they could homeschool their kids, just the loving parents. Shame on Germany for this. For shame, as someone that's half German myself, shame on Germany. Shame, shame, shame on you. And they were arrested, and they're going to be brought back to Germany. All because they want to, give their kids a real education that's unbrainwashed. This world is so upside down and backwards. If anybody had a drop of wisdom, and very few people have any wisdom at all, much less any insight to see what's going on, they would be ashamed of this world. But I know for a fact, I see the beauty and the evil of this world. I know everything runs in cycles. It always has run in cycles, and it always will run in cycles. but you need to at least every day dedicate an hour to figuring out how every little thread that ties you to tyranny and misery and consuming poison and poison through your mouth and poison through your ears and poison through your eyes, everything designed to bring you to your knees, how to take every one of those little threads and cut it. It only takes, like, well, today I've only, severed that little thread, which you can barely see. It's just like, it's a little bit of dust. Every day, though. Everybody has an hour in every day. It's like, what can I do? I don't really need a credit card. I'm going to get rid of all my credit cards the next day. I'm going to start putting away, $40, $50 a week towards non-perishable food. I am going to look for a piece of land that I can own outright that has super cheap property taxes. Property taxes are super evil. But I'm going to find someplace cheap. I'm going to give myself some skills. I'm going to deprogram myself. Every little thing. I've just been so busy, and it is an excuse. And of course, I've been in Florida, doing some stuff for some wonderful people. And then I did have a vacation, great blessings for that. Thanks to these wonderful people in Florida. But I've been trying to get up to my cabin because it's so peaceful there. There's no cell phone service there. There's nothing but pure, clean water. Right now, it's great to start up the wood-burning stove because it's getting down into the low 40s, upper 30s every night. Fire up the stove, cook a tater on the stove, read from a good book of wisdom, sit on the front porch, and have really, really deep thoughts and have an examined life. When I go up there, too, I wear my own clothing that I made with my own hands. I can honestly say that, the only labor, not children labor, you buy clothing, it's made by some horrible sweatshop. I make my own clothing. Make my own clothing up at the cabin. I used to say living by the sweat of your own brow, like I'm living at a little house on the prairie sort of thing. And of course I'm not. I've got my Tacoma pickup truck down there parked in front of the cabin, but I'm leading a simple life. I just got done paying the property taxes on my farm there, which, by the way, were $440. That's for an 80-acre farm with cabin and cave and springs and a gazillion trees. $440 a year is what I paid. Clean water, clean food, shelter, no cell service. I don't need this. I mean, here you actually get a blissful night's sleep if you sleep underneath this metal mesh fabric, which is what they use for RF blocking for wallets and whatnot. It does work, by the way. You sleep underneath it. It's like, wow. All of a sudden, I don't feel like there's a jumble of RF permeating my body and my head as I'm trying to sleep. It's just peaceful. It's what happens when people stay in that hotel. There's several hotels that are in deep, deep caves, and people get spooked when they go down there because there's no gazillion frequencies penetrating their body and their head, and it's a spooky feeling if you've never done it before. Not spooky bad, but it's kind of like when people they live in the city and they live next to a train and they hear noise and garbage and crying babies and whatnot. If they go out to the woods, it's just so quiet except for a cricket chirping or something. They get spooked because it's peaceful. People are so used to consuming poison through every orifice of their body, their eyes, their ears, their nose, their mouth, that when they experience clean water and no RF bombarding their body with a billion frequencies, that it spooks them. So it's that kind of spooky. Not bad spooky, but good kind of spooky. But people are just not used to it. The world is just so inverted. If everybody could just take an hour out of every day to try to sever some minuscule microthread of their being from this huge propaganda and lie machine. By the way, I'm not interested in discussing what's going on in the world right now over where you know what I'm talking about, and it's about to hit. The poo is literally about to hit the fan there. You know it and I know it. They've even said it's about to hit. But if it actually spreads to another country that I won't name, there will be a global effect. The world used to be really large. Now it is really small. And the world is And this is the point I'm really trying to get to. I apologize greatly if you thought I've stumbled through parts of this video, but I'm speaking off the cuff. There is no greater indicator of what is about to happen in this world than the fact that the world is so inverted, so upside down, where what is evil is praised as good, and what is good is spat at as being evil. Day is night, night is day. We're riddled, and this all throughout history. When that's happened, same thing in Rome. Right before Rome fell, they started doing these carnival sort of things in the Colosseum to distract the Romans from, the fact that Rome's about to collapse. There's just a circus going on right now. It's an orchestrated circus, undeniably. But economically and on several fronts, things are, I don't say this lightly, things are going to collapse. And it is not far off. All those pennies that you've been saving are going to be meaningless unless you have palpable things to keep yourself propped up. Spiritually, I mean, it's not just about food, clothing, and shelter and clean water, which it is. By having good books to read, things to lift your spirit up in addition to lifting your body up. And you can, spit and hiss at all the things of owning land, but raw land, by the way, takes care of itself. If you plop down an Amish cabin on it or a single wide trailer, so what? It's shelter. The land will take care of you as long as you, know how to manage it ever so slightly. In other words, don't chop all the trees down. Have enough to, keep your stove burning, but don't chop it all down. But it's also too a source of income. People need that to build their own shelters and cabins. Lumber is literally, you are growing money. Keeps you warm. It is money, and it will breed itself new shelters, by drying the wood, air drying the wood, and, building additional cabins. Doesn't take a lot of brains to build a simple cabin, too, by the way. But there's an enormous amount of you, and you're reporting back the same thing, that your friends are just deaf, dumb, and blind about what's going on in the world. But I don't wag my finger in, putting those people down. I know, they're just too busy. But this has always been the case. You could help them up to the point where you can't help them, and that's just going to be their own problem. And ignorance is bliss, but up until the point where it bites you in the boo-boo. And it will bite these people in the boo-boo. There's a little bit of slang there. It will bite them in the boo-boo. Say, ignorance is bliss. Well, that's true, but the other half of that statement is until it bites you in the boo-boo. And it always will. People just don't want to deal with it. It's like a nihilist, an atomist, or an atheist, that's in an extremely haunted house. Stuff is moving on the table, and, things are, cold things are touching their shoulder. I just don't want to believe it. It's like, why? It's real. And if you actually confront them and corner them, they'll say, yeah, it is, but I just don't want to, my mind is so weak it cannot deal with the truth. And a lot of people, it's not so much that they're in denial, it's that they are so weak of spirit and weak of will that they can't confront the truth. There's that old movie line, you can't handle the truth. A lot of people are like that. And these are just spineless jellyfish. And the world is really, really, really ripe with spineless jellyfish. We've been living the lazy, easy life, pretty much, kinda, on the grand scheme of things. But, the point in time where a lot of people that are living in denial, and denial is not a river in Egypt, it's going to bite them in the boo-boo, and that's going to be their own problem. You're not going to be able to help them, even though you want to help them, and I love helping people. It's horrific how bad homelessness is getting in the United States. I can feel things in this city that is so well off. This is a college town. It's always been well off. I can feel and see things, and I'm very sensitive to it. And I'm not bragging when I say that. I'm very sensitive to it, and I can see it and feel it at every corner. People that are in fear, they lash out in anger. And man, people, for no reason, are lashing out like nuts. And I've asked you that before, many of you, and you confirmed it yourself. People have gotten crazy. I mean, they really have. People have gotten nutty and unreliable and kooky. You can confirm it. I'll read your comments. This is a very informal video. I apologize for that. But this is an important topic. And anybody out there that denies what's going on, they're just doing that due to the fact that they're either extremely ignorant or they fundamentally, at the core of their being, know what's going on, but they're completely spineless like jellyfish. And they're like the little children that don't want to hear the truth, that they need to, drink their milk and go to sleep early. The little kids that stick their fingers in their ear and go, la, 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 la. The parents tell them, little Johnny, you need to brush your teeth so your teeth don't fall out. Little Johnny, you need to wipe your boo-boo so that, that's dirty. Use about, like, la, 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 la. It's not funny. But there's a lot of adults that are like that. They're children. They know what is, but it scares them and they don't want to acknowledge it. But you can't address anything until you acknowledge it, because until you acknowledge it, you can't confront it head on. And this is what, I'm not going to say men, but this is what real human beings do. I don't care if it's men or women. You have to be able to see this and confront it and acknowledge it, because if you keep denying it, it's like, the backside of your tooth is bad. It's like, why don't you go to the dentist? Well, the dentist might say I need a cavity and I'll have like $2,000 bills. Yeah, but the dentist is not the one that gave you the cavity. Well, I don't think I got a cavity. If I don't go to the doctor, then I'll never know if I have a really cavity for real, even though it hurts really bad and I probably know it is a cavity. It's that sort of denial. It's fear. And it's fear due to spinelessness. Anyway, tell me what you think, and I apologize if this video was too informal. I really just wanted to talk about this. And I apologize if this video is in any way upsetting to you. Don't be like a little kid, though. Stick your fingers in your ear and go, la, 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 la. Thanks so much, and goodbye.